I'm gonna cut straight to the chase with this one. Hey, I'm Pangaming, and I've been following the tales on the subreddit PokeMedia for a bit over 6 months now. PokeMedia is a place for people to write the equivalent of fanfictions for their original characters in the Pokemon world. But that's a pretty drastic oversimplification. It's a requirement on the subreddit that your post has to be formatted as a social media post. That's the framework around this whole thing. Most commonly, you'll see Twitter posts or chatter posts, which are the in-world equivalent, and for some reason, I like chatter more than X. Anyway, posts will be on Tumblr, or I think I've seen Discord a few times, or other sites. Most of the posts are just text, but you've got a range of additional mediums. Basic image edits are pretty common, as well as taking others' art and using it in character. With credit, very important, thank you Charity. But every so often you'll get something amazing, like a full storybook, or a YouTube video containing a heartfelt speech, or I don't know how they did that.
Invert your colors.
It's fun to see what people can get up to, and seeing the funny, relatable, wow, that's something someone in the Pokemon world would post, is what dragged me into the sub. But as I've lurked and read, this subreddit gets better. What you'll find on a day-to-day basis is so many separate plot lines, all moving all at once, and it makes sense. There's a ton of people on there, and everyone wants to tell their own story, so I try to stick to a few people and read all of their posts. I'll even go back if I miss something. For example, the user Kickback Artist has 2 main characters, Asher the Hoenn Gym Inspector and Gliss the Cinder Ace. I will drop everything to read any post that has Gliss in it because they are such a chaotic little gremlin and I love them. Gliss doesn't get a ton of posts, but posts aren't the only place for characters to shine. This is Reddit, after all. So when I see that telltale-G in the comments, I get so giddy to see what stupid thing is gonna come out of his mouth. Also, he's gay? Anyway, speaking of stupid things, the user PPPPA6, or as he's known in character, Grassy Guy, has a Porygon 2. This Porygon 2 is called Spamly, and I think the first thing I ever saw about him was when he was considering running a business where you pay him to slap someone over the internet. And then he did that. And then there were consequences. Spamly is simply chaotic, and that's it. That's all you need to know, and I love him for it. Just don't ask him about his attempt at making a Pokemon. And if we're talking Porygons, I have to mention Terabyte, which is one of Difficult Device's characters. Terabyte is just a delight to see, and sometimes when Spamly does something stupid like trying to go to space, Terabyte's ready to follow along. He's just a funny little guy who gets excited at the idea of other people being AI and cookies and candies and pastries. And as I'm writing this, they're going through a pretty crazy plot arc that they're calling Security Breach. Correction, they've finished it, and it's pretty good. I just hope that they manage to carry the rest of this plot out, because this is actually kind of insane. Maybe I just like Porygons. But no way they can beat my favorite, though. Trapinch is a god among men, and specifically Trapinch, not the evolutions. There's just so many characters that are worth mentioning, and if I wanted to talk about each of them in the depth they deserve, I would never finish this video. Hell, this video is already out of date as I record this, so here's some cliff notes on some other notable characters. Charity is just about the nicest person, period, and they come from Eon. We'll just call him Eon. So much so that they're immune to Ligma because you just can't do it to them. The sub loves them, and the funniest thing they've ever done was respond to a post with the block screened. Then there's Lortep, which the name and the user is the same. Lortep is someone I wouldn't recognize, but their posts are all great. That post about Pokeball seals, that was them. This absolutely cursed Nuzleaf post, Lortep. They also posted that Catsup Blast post, which admittedly they took from somewhere else, but the point is that Lortep keeps the subreddit supplied with casual posts. Then there's Pendulum from Still Not a Brick. It's another person that I've noticed recently because of their casual posts. I love those radio jokes, add a sprinkle of fae or fairy fun, and some relatable things as well. Then there's the user Arbitrary Chaos 13, or Sam and IV-913-star. Or I guess we'll just call him Star. They're two characters that I've recently enjoyed seeing. Star is a damaged Iron Valiant, and so there are several posts discussing human things like emotions or feelings, since Star is unable to feel those things. There's also the comedy behind things such as Star accidentally doxing Sam. And then there's Gossip Fleur, which is one of Arbitrary Chaos's creations. Gossip Fleur is a character that anyone is allowed to use. They're anonymous, and they take juicy gossip that someone isn't willing to say on their own account and make a post about it. It doesn't matter if this information's true, it just matters that it's worth talking about. This character is available to everyone, and it has been a huge success since Gossip Fleur was introduced. And yeah, this was the post that Terabyte got excited about earlier. But if I'm going to talk about the creators on PokeMedia, I need to talk about the man who's captivated me enough to stick around in the subreddit. Cdv3. You want to give a little bit about yourself?
I mean, I guess the main thing is that I've been doing a lot of writing for PokeMedia for the past, I think it has actually been over 6 months.
This is Cdv3, or as a little flower told me, Cove. To make this conversation easier for all of us, whenever I'm talking about the writer, that is Cdv3. If I'm talking about the in-world character, that's Cove. Even if that name is just an in-world joke that people have forgotten about weeks ago since I am recording this. Cdv3 has been on PokeMedia for quite a while now, and he's been writing on there since about September 2023. And because of that, he's built up quite the lore. But I think that Cdv3 is the perfect example of what makes PokeMedia so interesting to me, as well as being the perfect case study to look at for anyone looking to get into this creative writing pastime. So, congratulations Cdv3, you are today's insect, and I will try to display your guts in the best way I can. So, why don't you take a seat, get comfortable, relax, take a second if you need to. Well, why don't we start at the beginning?
Apparently, last night I got super wasted trying to tell everyone that the world is a giant Torterra, and now I'm worried that I was right. Not possible. Torterra hate the cold, so how are there cold places? Global warming.
Cdv3's first post. I mean, it's okay. By his account, it's just a insanely unfunny meme post. But I think it's a good way to dip his metaphorical toes into the water. There's no commitment, it's just a silly little post to get used to everything. And about 5 days later...
Red thread. People who use Leech Seed are terrible people, especially if they're also keeping the other Pokemon trapped on the field with a move like Bind. I get that Stall's a legitimate strategy, but then you just have these assholes who just want to torture other Pokemon. Source. Today, some jackass did this to Gate, Hydreigon that normally can handle some serious abuse in battle, and I've never seen him in so much pain. It's been so hard to watch such a strong-willed Pokemon go through that for absolutely no reason for so long. It's not even like Leech Seed plus Bind is a quick or good way to get a knockout, it's just torturing this Pokemon for no real reason, especially since that whole interaction lasted for so much longer than necessary. Update. Gate is now afraid of grass-type Pokemon, so there's also that. Can't really blame him either.
I believe this is a great way to introduce Cove as well as Gate. Cove is a trainer that cares about his Pokemon, and he's willing to speak his mind. Gate, well, here's what Cdv3 has to say.
The post was basically a character ranting about Leech Seed and how it is a very immoral move in universe because it's a very slow way to knock out a Pokemon. And it's like, that probably would be painful as hell. So I was like, okay, what's the most extreme example I could think of? Okay, a Hydreigon. And that is how Gate was created.
Hydreigon wasn't picked for Cove's team because Cdv3 liked Hydreigon, but it was for the bit. And this bit of a Hydreigon that's more of a lovable plush instead of a rampaging monster is the perfect way to introduce one of Cove's Pokemon in a roundabout way that doesn't feel forced. It's just another regular person posting about their regular trainer journey. The next post would be a follow-up, furthering the idea that Cove is a really caring trainer. Gate isn't the monster the Pokedex would have you assume, and temporarily patching up the leech seed problem by getting Gate a shed shell. After a few more posts, we'd finally get a rundown of Cove's team.
In celebration of being a full-out trainer for a year, I thought it would be a good idea to look back on the past and even a few old tweets from when I met each of my Pokemon on my team. The first I met was Gaia, Torterra. I met Gaia even before my decision to become a trainer, raising him since he was a Turtwig. He's always been super kind to others and has been a consistently good friend and partner for as long as I can remember. The second Pokemon that I met was Muna Musharna, who has been through a lot but has grown so much from when I first found her.
Moon was found abandoned in an alleyway, covered in slashes. After reporting it to the authorities and letting Moon recover for a week, Cove would adopt Moon.
The third Pokemon that I met was also an adopted Pokemon. Cinder, Ninetales, was also treated badly by a previous trainer, but has been able to work incredibly well within this team, even with a disability.
Cinder used to belong to a trainer who didn't feel like healing their Pokemon, resulting in Cinder having a damaged flame sac and being unable to use most fire moves.
The most recent addition to my team was Gate, a Hydreigon. That was the first Pokemon I ever caught on my own, as opposed to adopting or receiving it as a gift. Gate has been the biggest powerhouse of the team, while also being really sweet to be around.
And now you've got the full story. Cove is a trainer who loves to adopt and cares deeply for his Pokemon. Gaia is Cove's main man, which makes sense since Turtwig is Cove's profile picture. Moon and Cinder are both adopted and each have their own histories to be explored in the future, and Gate is just a lovable cinnamon roll. A little weird trend is that Moon, Cinder, and now Gate each have their own little trauma which can be fleshed out, while Gaia doesn't. Cdv3 is pretty careful when it comes to not closing possible places to explore. Cove only has 4 Pokemon, so if Cdv3 wanted to add someone to the team, he could. Cove's team has just enough backstory to dictate how they act, but not too much to make sure Cdv3 can go wherever he wants to with the plot lines. After this, Cove attempts a local tournament, and oh my stars, that is a lot of text to read. I noticed that Cdv3 marked these posts as a part of a major storyline or important, but I'm not going to summarize that. It's several battles, and I don't know anything about battling. Personally, I believe that this is a great example to show that dumping pages of text isn't going to get a good response, as the first part, without a wall of text, has 6 different people responding, compared to part 2, 3, and 4's 2, 1, and 0 comments from different people, respectively. Don't get me wrong, things like upvotes or comments or views shouldn't stop you from posting what you want to post. Sometimes the thing you just put like 3 weeks of effort into goes completely under the radar, and then you feel bad about it for several days and still pissed about it after a month. Anyway, let's see if it was any good.
Overall, as a person who has paid some attention to competitive Pokemon, this was an interesting read. It's interesting how the transitions from regular Pokemon gameplay goes to in-world battles here. There was a nice selection of Pokemon used as antagonists here, and Cdv3 did a good job in writing battles that plays into both the strengths and weaknesses of Cove's team, even adding a true competitive sweep. There is also some good character development for his team, with each member of his 4-Mon party performing really well at some point. Also, trauma for 2 of them. I enjoyed reading it, but I doubt that the average person viewing the PokeMedia subreddits here to read whole battles, and are more here to see the shorter chatter text and images post. It is a shame that the Showdown link was not saved, as I would have loved to see it.
What? I said I wasn't going to read it, so I got LanCon too. Something I do think is interesting is how CDV writes about it.
But those were very fun posts to write. These also were my very first times ever writing anything remotely resembling an action scene, and I'll fully admit that they were not great, lol.
So, after that, we've got some relaxing posts about the team playing Monster Hunter, a little AMA where Cove drops that he used to volunteer at Pokemon rescue and adoption centers, further developing Cove's caring nature, and posting a question that mentions Moon's mischievous trick room usage. Now, we return to the nitty-gritty with a small arc I'll call Cinder Learns Will-O-Wisp.
Today, Cinder, Ninetales, decided that she wanted to try and learn Will-O-Wisp, since that move requires a balance of fire and her other powers, as opposed to the pure fire that other fire-type moves need.
I'm gonna cut in here. Due to the nature of this storytelling medium, you'll notice several things that don't really fit with traditional stories. Because this is on a social media being told part by part, you can't just expect the audience to know everything about you and your characters. Whenever one of your named Pokemon is mentioned, it's common to add additional indicators. Most times this will just be parentheses, adding the type of Pokemon you're talking about. In addition, adding context to posts, such as the second and third parts of this chain, let anyone understand what's happening, as well as letting Cdv3 flesh out the situation further. Oh, and for any posters who want to attach an image canonically but don't have the means to create that image, just write an image ID or a video transcript. You're about to see that now, actually.
So far, it's actually going pretty well. Cinder managed to create a few flames so far and has pretty good control. I'm making sure she doesn't hurt herself trying too hard. Once Cinder starts something, she really hates quitting, and I really don't want her to push herself too far. Image ID of a Ninetales concentrating hard on trying to control a single small Will-O-Wisp flame. Today, during training, Moon decided to be funny to try to use Psychic to disrupt Cinder while she was trying to practice her Will-O-Wisp, which she's made excellent progress on, by the way. Unfortunately, at that moment, Cinder was actually having one of her best attempts yet, producing her biggest flame yet, but she had to concentrate incredibly hard to control the flame. This was the worst possible time for, say, Musharna to use Psychic to disrupt Cinder. When she was hit, Cinder completely lost control and ended up sending the Wisp towards Gaia by accident, burning him badly enough to send him to the Poke Center. This made Cinder think she caused the injury and made her cry and give up for the day. I had a big talk with Moon about boundaries and also had her apologize to Cinder for ruining her training session and shatter her confidence. I think Moon genuinely didn't know what she did, since after they talked, Moon was devastated to find out how badly Cinder was affected. I also really had to hammer home just how badly Cinder was actually hurt. For anyone concerned, even though I talked with her, she still thinks it was her fault. She still wants to learn Will-O-Wisp, but it was much more reserved than before, not using enough fire.
This set of posts gives more character to everyone involved. We learn that Cinder is the kind of person, Pokemon, to set their minds on something and to follow it to the very end, but she also gets in her own head about what happens, and Cinder can't stand the idea of hurting Gaia. Moon, who's had very little characterization other than using Trick Room, officially gains the trait of Prankster, who also didn't understand boundaries before this arc. It's not like Prankster wasn't expected though. Trick is literally in the name of their favorite move. There's also a little bit of Gaia flavoring, as Gaia never gets angry at anyone, but he did get very upset with Moon over this. And also, what is this idiom? Like, what? Technically, this isn't the end of the Will-O-Wisp arc, but it only gets finished after some other posts, and I suppose it's not really relevant other than Cinder does learn Will-O-Wisp. So what happens around the Will-O-Wisp posts? Well, it's checkup time for Gaia and Gate. Gaia's doing perfectly fine, other than getting up there in age, and Gate freaks out at needles, which, I mean, I almost fainted when I got a COVID booster, so I get it. And Gate's fine. And I am too, if you care. Cdv3 also makes what he regards as the worst post he's ever made. Let's see what future Cdv3 says about it.
This post is edgy garbage. By far the worst post I've ever made, and honestly deserved to bomb way harder than it did. It was just shock value for shock value's sake, involving a genuinely disgusting topic.
Wow, what's the post?
Just scrolled through chatter and saw that someone posted one of the worst videos I've ever seen, marked it as educational content. If you find it, just report it and don't watch it. Also, at chatter, get your shit together and enforce TOS for once. Image ID. censored screenshot of a chatter post featuring a video that starts off normally before suddenly cutting to a sickening shock value gore video involving a blitzel that is too graphic to describe and goes on for way too long.
Okay. I mean, it's not a good post. There's nothing new here. There's no character development. The logistics of a screenshot that somehow shows the normal video and the sickening one isn't hitting for me. And I'm just gonna briefly mention the whole a chatter post of featuring. It's not good. But is it unreasonable? Yeah, it doesn't do literally anything for Cove or his team's story. However, I personally don't think it crosses any lines. Oh, Pan, how could you say that? If you've used the internet for long enough, you know how often some stupid video or link goes around with something you prefer not to see in it. This was significantly more common in the past, but every so often we hear about another video going around. So in the case that one of these was going around and Cove happened to fall victim, I could 100% see him making a post about it. And I guess the point here is that this post, yeah, it's probably not the worst one, but less because it's a bad post and more because every other post is great. And now, let's move on to a taste of why Cdv3's writing has people hooked.
On my way to the Poke Center right now, Moon has been having some pretty bad nightmares the past few days that she's been able to share with the rest of the team while we sleep. In one of those nightmares, Moon is back in her situation before I adopted her, having flashbacks to her previous owner beating her and abandoning her next to a dumpster. In another nightmare she's had twice, Gaia is dying from some unknown injury. When she wakes up, these nightmares have been really badly affecting her, and she's been really worried about Gaia. Normally Musharna don't have dreams, let alone such intense nightmares, since they usually just focus on eating dreams at night, but these have been rough. Things have gotten bad enough that I'm going to see if there's anything that can be done about the nightmares she's been having. Update. Moon's checkup just finished, and apparently this is just how Musharna cope with trauma. Musharna are able to share their dreams and nightmares with others, and their nightmares are how they handle trauma. I'm still really concerned about Moon, though. Any advice on how to best support her would be appreciated. I just don't want Moon to keep having to go through that every night, and I really want to help her, but I don't know how to. Well, some of her nightmares revolve around Gaia, yeah? Why not you bring them in for a checkup? I don't know if Moon has any disaster sensing abilities a la Absol, but it wouldn't hurt to check. Either she's confirmed right and her nightmares might be hints to the future, or she's wrong and that proves her nightmares are nothing to worry about. I did very recently get Gaia checked up within the last week and everything was okay then outside of some signs that he's aging, which nothing short of Dialga or Arceus itself could do anything about it. But I'll look into getting him another appointment soon. That said, it's a bit tough scheduling a checkup right now, since a lot of Pokemon get sick around this time of the year, and Gaia just had one done, but I'll see what I can do. I just really hope that these nightmares are just her imagination running wild, but I'll see what I can do. Maybe your Pokemon need a therapy Pokemon. I don't really know, unfortunately, just lots of hugs and snuggles and snacks. Here's where things get really complicated within the team. Gaia practically is the team's therapy Pokemon. Even back during the time when Moon was up for adoption before I took her in and I was taking care of Moon as part of my volunteer work, Gaia was always there to comfort Moon. They have pretty much always been very close, and Moon seeing Gaia in those situations in her nightmare have been really tough on her. Tomorrow, I'm planning on getting the two of them together and trying to get Moon and Gaia to talk about the situation. Today, I've had a talk with Moon. During the conversation, Moon brought up and confirmed that her nightmares about her past have been her own way of trying to cope with the trauma from her previous owner's abuse. She also let me know that as scary as they are, her nightmares are still important for her to have. I promise not to interrupt Moon's nightmares and to make sure that she knows that everything is okay and she's loved by her team once she wakes up in the mornings. Moon also brought up that she knows that Gaia is starting to get older and has been really concerned with him lately. I've reassured her that he's okay, but she's still worried. I also then had her and Gaia talk about the issue of her nightmares about Gaia in private. According to Moon, Gaia said that his time might be coming, but it's important to enjoy the time that they still have, and that they should still have a lot of that time left. I then let her know that if she needs me or Gaia at night, to let either one of us know and we'll be there for her. While Moon was convinced that everything was okay, I felt like I had to talk to Gaia in private to see if there was anything wrong with him that I wasn't aware of. During that conversation, Gaia pointed out that he's getting older, and that because of how active his life has been, he's been thinking about how much longer he has left, especially with Moon's nightmares about him. He's concerned that it's a sign that his time is running out soon. I've reassured Gaia that no matter what happens, we'll all be there for him to keep him happy and healthy for as long as possible until that time comes, but I'm still a little worried about him. Gaia also made me and Moon promise not to tell anyone else, to not make them worry. There's nothing else that can be done but continue to help Gaia. While the nightmares are completely justified, I think that it's important to establish the idea that a natural death isn't something to be feared and shouldn't overwhelm those involved. I'm doing the most that I can to help Gaia and Moon right now, but it is pretty tough, especially with all this hitting so suddenly. But I'm pretty certain that there's still plenty of time left for him, and I'll make sure that everyone is as happy as possible, but the idea of losing Gaia is genuinely scaring me.
Oh. Okay. This is where we're at now. The funny little characters on this funny little site are now discussing the thing that looms over all of us. Death. And I believe this is what makes Cdv3 Cdv3. He's known for his ability to weave heavy topics like death or trauma into his stories, so much so that I literally asked him,
"Do you just love to affectionately torture them?"
There we go. I was waiting for this question.
And if you're looking for his response, that's for later. Spoilers. But this is the first time where I've pointed out more than just the post. Because PokeMedia is a subreddit, people get to comment as each step of the story happens. Sam is just trying to help, offering suggestions, and while I didn't read it out, Kane tries to comfort Cove by bringing up what other grieving trainers with Torterras have done. These comments allow the medium to feel less like a story being told and more like life. We're all in the thick of it, and there's no way for any of us to see the future. Hell, I don't think Cdv3 knows what his next post is half the time, other than the times where Cdv3 does a crossover with someone else and then they both know what's going to happen in the future because they're writing the future. Okay, with that attempt at a joke, let's just move on to something lighter. Prejudice. No, wait. Technically, I am skipping one post where Cove talks about that time an adoption center was flooded with shiny trapinches, which is pretty cool. But back to Prejudice, which I think I'll just summarize since this post actually requires some in-world knowledge. Gate is a Hydreigon, and if I start reading the Bulbapedia page, Hydreigon is a violent, destructive Pokemon. It will attack anything that moves, determining it a foe. Many stories describe Hydreigon destroying entire villages. It is said that Hydreigon's reason for being ferocious is due to an ancient people loathing it. The ancient people believed Hydreigon was evil incarnate, hence always attacking it. And some other fun facts, like it's literally the brutal Pokemon. The Pokédex entry states they use all three heads to consume and destroy everything. Also, in Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Gates to Infinity, there's apparently a Hydreigon in the game that has Gate in the subtitle, and there's a Munna, and I don't know about you, but it's obvious to me that Cdv3 is just stealing names and ideas from games that he thought no one has played, and he's even leaking the next Pokemon Mystery Dungeon game. It's gonna be something like Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, Cinder Blossoms. Wait, no, that joke doesn't land. My point here is that in the games, Hydreigons were historically assumed to be made of pure evil and are still assumed to be monstrous in nature. Gate, from his inception as a character, is the exact opposite, and I doubt he could even hurt a Joltik. The post discusses Gate realizing that he gets targeted more than the others, and Cove asks for help on how to explain Prejudice to Gate. Okay, let's get to some easier posts. Cove treats himself to a local performance of the Litleo King musical. Cove tells some more tales of the adoption center, which does get a little dark. A throwback to when Gate evolved into a Hydreigon. And who could forget Bath Day? Cdv3 also learns the power of letting other people talk about their characters by making a post that is, well, asking a question, Cdv3 provides an easy way for other people to interact while still being able to share more about his characters. And if you care about upvotes and comments, this one was a major success, so much so that he'd even follow it up with another post. But I believe these posts aren't just being made because of the positive reaction, no. These posts are easier to do, it's an easy setup to allow character interactions with each other, as well as being a nice way to make light-hearted posts to offset the heavy ones. And speaking of heavy ones, how about another Adoption Center post?
The day that Obsidian's, Houndoom's, last former teammate and best friend was adopted while he wasn't, forcing the two to separate. What followed was by far the hardest day I ever worked at the Adoption Center. I was the one who had to break the news to Obsidian that he would have to say farewell to his teammate, and he did not take it well at all. Understandably so, given that he now thought that I was the reason that his friend was leaving him forever, since he saw me lead them to their new trainer. Obsidian responded by viciously attacking me. This wasn't my first time being attacked by a Pokemon, but it was the most vicious attack I've ever seen. The news was a massive betrayal to Obsidian, who had once considered me a friend but now stole his family from him. In that moment, he genuinely wanted to kill me, to make me pay for taking his family away. Obsidian was relentless, scratching and biting at me furiously, while also burning my right arm. He was eventually restrained by my co-workers, who heard it all and rushed to my aid. I was sent to the hospital, my injuries were quickly treated, but this time the burn didn't go away, and it still hasn't to this day. As for how Obsidian is doing, I have no clue. After he attacked me, my co-worker called emergency services to take him away, hopefully to be placed in a better shelter for him. I just hope that he didn't get put down for what he did to me, but I'll never know for sure if he's still out there.
So, this post continues to give more context to Cdv3's Adoption Center days, as well as possibly setting up a future story arc. What's really funny is the chain of /UJ comments, which, by the way, /UJ means whatever follows it is out of character. If you see a /RJ after it, that's getting back into character. Cdv3 loves to leave an out-of-character comment on his posts to give a little more perspective around it, but the One Fearless Falcon suggests spinning the Obsidian stuff into a plotline with a redemption or a forgiveness arc. Cdv3 responds saying,
I'm not sure how I could do that well.
Just to edit his comment to say,
Whoa, yeah, actually, I'll have to do that.
Then Redacted Times even plants the idea of having Obsidian lick the burn to heal it. This is the most straightforward example of the community helping to shape the narrative that I can give you. Because we don't have the ability to see in Cdv3's mind, it's impossible to tell how much of his stories are inspired or shaped by the comments he gets, and I'm pretty sure he wouldn't remember most of them. But it's not time to finish the Obsidian storyline yet. It's time to talk about Cdv3's second worst post, in his opinion, of course. And by worst post, I mean an entire storyline takes the spot. A fun hike. But first, it's time for a tangent. Have you heard of a false Hydra? Back in 2014, Arnold K. posted the concept on a blog. Imagine you enter a town you've never been in before. You spend the night with some of your friends, and the next day you notice something's off. A picture you had taken last night with the boys had another figure in it. Sure, yeah, it was you, Tim, John, David, and Josh, but who is that? You ask the others and no one knows. You even go as far as asking the barkeep who served you last night, and they don't have any idea either. Must have been a photobomber. You go pay for the rooms, which, according to the ledger, you and your group got 6 rooms. As you and your friends start to leave, there's a sudden air of emptiness? Like you've been listening to loud music and it's finally stopped. You turn to ask your friends if it's just you, but the moment passes rather quickly. Regardless, you ask your 3 friends, John, David, and Josh, if something felt off. This is the False Hydra. A False Hydra resides under a town, surviving by sending one of its heads to the surface to consume a usually living body. The False Hydra gets away with this by flooding the area around it with its song. This song has a unique effect of creating gaps in your attention. While the False Hydra sings, anything that hears it ignores it, but not just ignores. Creatures that hear the song will actively create excuses to fill in the gaps. You can't see it, you can't hear it, and you'll forget anything you knew about the creatures the False Hydra feasts on. The False Hydra is such a unique idea for something like a Dungeons & Dragons campaign because it recontextualizes how the game is played. By having a False Hydra in play, the usually omniscient DM becomes an unreliable narrator, without ever letting the players know that the change has occurred. The concept of treating the DM as more than just the narrator has always interested me. So, what if, hypothetically, the character of a PokeMedia post valiantly believed one thing was happening, while literally posting a picture showing the opposite?
Today was another pretty standard day of hiking, though I did notice that even though it feels like we made a lot of distance, I haven't seen any mile markers in a bit, and the trail has gotten a lot harder suddenly. I double-checked to make sure we're still on the trail and everything is still adding up, nothing looks out of place and everything is still visible. I guess this is just a rough part of the trail. Nobody else seems to be really bothered by this, seeing as how half my team, Moon and Gate, can fly, and the other half, Gaia and Cinder, are practically built to handle rough terrain. Everyone is doing pretty well, though there was a weird disagreement at one point. Partway through the day, Gate insisted that we go off the trail thinking that it was the right way. Thankfully, it just seemed like a misunderstanding and we continued down the trail. I have also noticed that the weather has been a bit weird in the last few miles. We're not really too far up and it's not too bad, but things are getting a bit cooler than I thought they would be. We're still in the middle of the woods, but things just feel a bit off. It's randomly getting pretty cold out of nowhere even though we're still in the woods. Not enough to be a big problem yet, but it's still concerning. We did find a pretty good spot to camp out tonight in a little clearing. It's a bit colder than I would like for it to be for Gate and Gaia, but it shouldn't be too bad. Even if those two need their blankets tonight, and Gate had a bit of a hard time starting the campfire.
This is post 4 out of 7 in the arc, and yet this is the first time anything weird happens. This is also the only time anything relevant to the idea that caused this arc, and it's way overdone. In this single post, there are 1, 2, 3 obvious things that instantly give the game away, and that's not counting the photo. The False Hydra type story needs to have time to breathe, to slowly claw its way to the forefront of everyone's mind. I'm not saying this couldn't have been done through several PokeMedia posts, but this was done poorly. In fact, how should have this arc been done? Post 1, we start by announcing the hike and asking for advice. This is a good start and also serves as a way for Cdv3 to convince the audience that this isn't going to be a trauma fest. Post 2, start of the hike. My idea would have been to start with something early, but something that could have been explained away. Maybe Cove finds some berries or flowers or mushrooms that he believes do one thing, when in reality they do something else entirely. If someone points it out, Cove could just say something like, I mean, where I'm from, those are called fungi, or whatever. Post 3. The original had the party playing in a river. If we wanted to keep the river concept, we could have some fish nibble at the party, but when they look, they don't see anything? Or maybe the river was actually just a ton of mud? Either way, Gate, who's unaffected by the Zoroark's magic due to typing, wouldn't participate with the party's fun, which would be out of character for Gate. But by having Cinder also not partake, this doesn't look that weird to the audience. Post 4. Make it about one thing. Personally, I would choose Gate's reaction to the group going off the trail, which then could lead into offhandedly mentioning how Gate's been acting off. His actions would be called into question, and it may cause people to look back at the last post to see if they missed something. The 5th post was originally talking about how bad the party's suffering with the cold temperature. This could still work for the rewrite, if the cold was a new addition for the post, which could have crept up on the party, resulting in them suffering. Post 6 could have been where Cove figures out what's happening and deals with the situation. In reality, it's Cove, spotting the Zoroark, and then his party running him out of the area. I suppose my point with this is that the idea could have worked, and I think I'm just disappointed it didn't. It just wasn't thought out enough. Oh, and the last post of the arc. After the extreme cold, Gate and Gaia didn't seem to be doing well, so
I made sure to get Gaia and Gate checked up at the Poke Center as soon as we got back, since both had some difficulties over the last few days. Gate had some mild hypothermia, though with the help of a heated blanket, he is feeling better in no time. Gaia, on the other hand, was doing a lot worse than I thought he was. He was still chilled from the hike and really pushed himself to his limits on those last few days. I was pretty surprised, given that I even told Gaia to let me know if he was getting too tired or wasn't feeling well, but maybe he just wanted to keep pushing through in spite of everything. Either way, the nurses told me that Gaia needs to stop pushing himself so hard, especially given his relative age, since they've noticed that his heart rate is still lower than expected even now that he's warmed up again. They said that Gaia should still be able to do whatever he wants to do, but both the nurses and I have let him know that he needs to stop trying to push himself so much and to let me know if he needs to rest. Also, as a side note, does anybody have any tips to get A Torterra to take his medicine? Gaia got prescribed some heart medication that he really needs to take, but he just doesn't want to take them.
well, that's a rough plot arc with an ending that certainly got some people concerned. But let's get some happy, nice times with the post in between story arcs. What's the next one? Oh no.
I've decided to try and arrange a mini intervention for Gaia. Basically, what I did was have Gaia and Moon go off into another room so that Moon could hopefully try to convince Gaia to take his pills without me having to sneak them into his food. I expected this talk to take maybe around 10 to 15 minutes. Nearly an hour later, the two came out, with Moon clearly being distraught. Moon mainly focused on telling Gaia how much he means to the whole team and that the medicine should keep him alive for as long as possible, emphasizing that he should be okay if he takes his pills every day. Gaia, in response, told Moon that while he's feeling better than he did, he still isn't feeling great, even with the medicine that he knows I snuck into his dinner, but he doesn't want to keep going to a Poke Center for the rest of his life. Instead, Gaia wants to spend his time happy with his family and be part of the team as if nothing has changed. According to Moon, Gaia will start willingly taking his medicine for the team's sake, but only if I promise not to take him to a Poke Center if, and that's a huge if, things get worse. He says he doesn't want to die in a Poke Center bed, hooked up to machines that will just prolong the inevitable. Gaia also wants Moon and I not to tell anyone else on the team anything about this, since he doesn't want them to be sad about him potentially leaving. I'm honestly just not quite sure what to do here. I want to respect Gaia's wishes, but right now it's so hard to accept. No! This isn't helping, Gaia. Don't make me cry, please! Seriously, if you can, please don't. Please do not kill Gaia, he's too sweet. Please let him be safe. Well, I feel horrible now, yay! Same, but at least I'm doing what I can to try and help Gaia out. Not sure if I should be proud or not for that, but I kinda am. Thanks either way.
So, writing's on the wall now, but Gaia doesn't want the group to worry about it. That way, Gaia can just continue on, like nothing is wrong. And nothing is wrong. I'm just glad that Gaia can just relax for a bit.
Today has been a bit of a rough day so far. I decided to have another battle since it's been a little bit. We ended up doing a relatively casual 4v4 battle with basically no stakes so that both of our teams could have a good battle. I opened with Cinder, and to be honest, in this battle, Cinder was incredible. She got a near-perfect sweep, scoring all 4 knockouts and only getting hit once in the process. Easily her best performance ever in terms of results. Back at home, Cinder was still extremely proud of herself and was being really obnoxious about it. As for the specifics, according to Moon, Cinder was bragging about how much better than everyone else she did in the battle, and was just generally annoying everyone. Though Cinder did make a few comments that went way too far even for her. The biggest offender was when Cinder told Gaia that she felt like she needed to carry Gaia's slack lately with her performance today, since Gaia wasn't doing as much at home as usual, calling him lazy, uninterested, and selfish for not contributing more. Moon, knowing exactly why Gaia has been taking it easy lately, got noticeably upset and nearly outed Gaia's heart condition to the team to defend him before Gaia stepped in to stop her. Instead, he just seemed to sadly nod in agreement. Seeing that Cinder was really upsetting the rest of the team, Gate, who had just been standing to the side trying to ignore this argument like usual, suddenly snapped, which he never does at anyone, let alone his own team, and launched a massive rant at Cinder. According to Moon, Gate held nothing back, focusing on how arrogant Cinder is, how rude she's been in trying to make Gaia of all Pokemon feel bad, finishing by pointing out that without Gaia's support, she would still be feeling sorry about herself because of her injury and wouldn't even be able to use an Ember. That last comment cut Cinder deeply and instantly made her burst into tears, since she's extremely sensitive about others bringing up her damaged flame sack, let alone like that. I know I should be proud of Gate for standing up for Gaia, but he also did go way too far, and has really hurt Cinder. They're both in timeout right now, and I'm just not quite sure how to handle something like this. The team has argued before, but never quite like that. After an extremely awkward dinner where Gate and Cinder were sitting about as far away from each other as possible while Cinder was still upset and Gate was still showing no signs of apologizing, I had to arrange another intervention between the two of them. I took both Gate and Cinder into a room together, and let both of them know that they were in the wrong during their arguments, even though neither of them thought they were. With Cinder, I explained that she needed to tone down her cockiness, and that while it was fine to be proud of herself for her win earlier today, she doesn't need to rub it in everyone else's faces, and there was no excuse for saying what she did to Gaia. With Gate, I let him know that while he did a good thing in standing up for Gaia, how he went about it was the worst possible way to handle things. There was no excuse for him to bring up Cinder's trauma, and what he did was just as bad as what Cinder did to Gaia to start this whole mess. Once I was done with that, I asked them both to apologize to each other, which went about as well as you would expect. Gate was able to apologize for bringing up her disability, which was a good start, but then he immediately followed up and said that he still stood by everything else that he said about her. Cinder obviously didn't take that too well, responding by refusing to accept Gate's non-apology, and then doubling down on her thoughts about Gaia out of pure spite for Gate, which really started to anger him. Right before things were about to escalate into a full-out fight between the two, I recalled both of them into their Pokeballs. I'm honestly pretty damn disappointed in both of them for handling this so immaturely. I'm having both of them spend the night in their Pokeballs instead of the outside, like usual, which should hopefully be enough time to let them cool off and realize that they've been acting like children. I don't think this is safely resolvable, treating Gate as equally in the wrong as Cinder. I'm worried if you simply try to force them together, it will just breed resentment in Gate, not just for Cinder, but for you as well. You keep saying you're proud he's standing up for his friends, and it's just that he brought up Cinder's sore spot you're upset by, but your actions here just don't match that. Gate actually apologized, but stuck to his guns on protecting his friends. Cinder chose to provoke him again, and they're both acting immaturely? You think the answer is to make them both suffer equally through team exercises? You are treating them as both equally in the wrong here, when Gate has honestly done everything right just because his priority isn't de-escalating the conflict at any cost. What Gate did in the first place wasn't even as bad as Cinder because he didn't bring it up out of nowhere to hurt her. He was talking about how much Gaia had helped Cinder, and that is one of the major things he helped with. That is how you phrased it. This will feel like punishment for standing up to Cinder to Gate. It doesn't matter how many times you say it. He was told his objectively smaller slight was as bad as Cinder's targeted attack at his friends, and even though that's not fair, he was willing to concede the point and apologize for the part he was told was bad, while not being willing to concede his entire position. Cinder doubled down and attacked verbally, even if she didn't start the physicality, and because he didn't concede entirely based on what you admit is only a small part of the argument, he's just as bad as Cinder? At that point, then it's the whole argument, not just that. I don't know, it just doesn't feel like your actions or even words line up with your words here. And I don't know if Gate will feel the same or not, but if he does, this can't end well. To be honest, I didn't ever really think of things like that. When I get the chance to, I'll definitely have to talk to Gate about this in private to clear things up. After thinking about it, Gate's actions haven't been as bad as Cinder here, though either way, they'll both still have to work together in the team, whether they like each other or not. I'll see if I can figure out any system that doesn't make the teamwork feel like a punishment to him, and apologize to him for treating him like what he did was equally as bad. Can I say that I've read that and immediately thought, fuck, this is completely right. Like, I don't actually have a single legitimate argument against that, even though it's different from every other POV I've read so far. I've already got the resolution partially written, but I'm definitely going to keep this in mind.
And here's where I cut in again. It's me, Pan R/, and there's a lot to say about this arc, accurately titled Infighting. First of all, Cdv3 continues to show why I believe he's one of the best on the subreddit. He keeps the tension caused by the looming threat of Gaia's death, only to snack more on top of it through somewhat reasonable ways. Cinder. Every character's actions are in line for them, while still being able to clash. It's just a perfect cacophony. Second of all, Infighting is another example of how this medium allows for others to directly influence each other's stories. In fact, when I asked Cdv3 about how others have influenced his posts, he directly pointed me to Gifted Contractor's comment.
This one comment single-handedly changed the ending of this storyline, where they basically called out the whole idea that, no, they are not equally in the wrong here.
Well, I've got some reading to do for that.
You don't have to read it if you don't especially need to, but...
Bestie, I'm making a whole video on this. I've got to read it.
Oh yeah, you are doing the whole video, which I am so sorry for how much context is going to come right before this.
Whoops, let that one play a little long. Because of the comment, the way Infighting wraps up is pretty sweet. Cove talks with Gate, establishing that defending his friend is great, but the way that he did it went too far. Then he sets up a 2v2 battle for Cinder and Gate, allowing Cinder to decide when she needs Gate's help. Cinder then realizes that she can't do anything against a Azumarill and a Vaporeon, and after realizing that, Cinder apologizes and begs Gate to help her. And finally, we have a good team dynamic. How nice. Now let's get back to the good times and see what Cove's up to after getting the team back together.
I was looking through some of my old photo albums to see if I can find any good ones, since Guy's birthday's tomorrow and I wanted to dig up some good ones. I came across a few really good old pictures and videos of the team today. This photo was from back when I first received Gaia as a gift from my family when I was very young, as a way to meet my first Pokemon way before I went out on my own journey. ID image of a very young Turtwig, full of energy, very excited to meet its new trainer.
You get the post. The first picture is meeting Gaia, the next one is Gaia calming down Moon during her backstory, there's an image of Gaia evolving into a grottle, 2 Cinder images for the Cinder fans out in the audience, and the last image is an unevolved Gate, meeting Gaia for the first time. Aw, how cute. And it's Gaia's birthday tomorrow? Let's get into the next arc, Gaia's birthday celebration.
Happy birthday, Gaia! Gaia just turned 34 today, and the team is all celebrating by letting him pretty much do whatever he wants today. So here we are at the nicest Pokemon accommodating restaurant I know. Image ID. A photo with a Torterra wearing a very small and very goofy party hat, surrounded by a Musharna, Ninetales, and Hydreigon, all of whom are looking happily at the camera. Getting up there. What the distortion is wrong with you?
Happy birthday, Gaia! And all the comments share their congratulations! There's a lot of them. Even at this point in Cdv3's career, he's been writing for long enough and well enough for people to genuinely care about Cove and his party. So let's get on with the party for the party.
Some really terrible news just hit us suddenly today. While in a battle, Gaia just collapsed suddenly. He hadn't actually been hit at all during the battle, and was just sent out, so he wasn't tired from battling, he just collapsed. Knowing something was seriously wrong, I forfeited immediately, and rushed Gaia straight to the Poke Center. I know I broke my promise with Gaia by doing this, but can you blame me? It turns out that Gaia had a heart attack, and his heart is growing weak from his old age, plus how far he's pushed himself his whole life. Most damningly, we were told that it was finally time for Gaia to retire from battling so that he could live his best life for the time he has left. Gaia was devastated to hear the news, but there was no way I'm risking his health by putting him in any more battles, so I had to break it to him that there were things he just couldn't do anymore so that he could stay alive. I genuinely don't think I've ever seen Gaia as upset as he was before, but after I told Gaia that he can't battle anymore, he just looked so defeated, and there wasn't much of anything I could do to make him feel better. There's a lot of difficult things you aren't told about when becoming a trainer, and having to tell a lifelong friend that they can't keep doing what they love is pretty high up there. I haven't told the rest of the team about Guy's health yet, since I'm still trying to respect his wishes. Plus, I don't think I could, even if I wanted me to, since how do you tell a team that? I also just can't stop thinking about what that nurse told me about Guy not having much time left. That can't possibly be true, right? Right? Things with Guy have gotten worse and aren't getting any better. Today, during the team's lunch, Guy suddenly decided to step aside into another room. Knowing something was wrong since he doesn't do stuff like that ever, I decided to follow behind him and see what was going on. Everything seemed normal for a moment until he suddenly fell down again like yesterday with what was most likely a heart attack. I tried to call for help in rushing him to a Poke Center, but Guy intentionally knocked the phone out of my hands as he was going down, as if to tell me not to call the Poke Center and break my promise with him to not let him die in one. Thankfully, Guy was able to get back up on his feet after the single worst minute I've had in my life, where I thought he was gone, but it was clear to the both of us that his heart condition was getting much worse and that there wasn't too much else that anyone could do about it without putting him on life support. In that moment, Guy almost seemed to come to terms with his fate, realizing that he doesn't want to just prolong the inevitable endlessly, or to die miserable in a Poke Center. He just wants to live his last few days surrounded by the team and go out with the people he loves at his side. After checking to make sure he could still walk and was as close to okay as possible, we then went back to the rest of the team who were still eating and barely noticed that we weren't there. I still hadn't even told the rest of the team yet that Gaia was even retiring, let alone dying, but it was pretty clear to them that something was wrong with how Gaia had been acting lately, on top of seeing me so upset, only barely holding back tears for Gaia's sake. Knowing that this would probably be one of the last chances we would ever have, I decided to let the whole team take one final group photo to remember this version of the team forever, to remember Gaia forever. Afterwards, I tried to tell the rest of the team about Gaia's condition, or just have him tell them himself, but we just couldn't. I can hardly believe it myself, and I just can't do it. I know I need to, and it will only hurt more if I can't, and that it is what's best for everyone, but it's just still too hard. Seeing how happy everyone is right now, enjoying the moment, and knowing the news would just crush everyone is too damn hard right now. I'm planning on taking Gaia on a little adventure around town tomorrow to let him do whatever he wants with the team for his last few days while he's still here. But there's still that overwhelming, horrifying fear that soon he won't get to have it tomorrow.
And now for Cdv3's favorite post.
Today I took Guy and the team out and about through what was basically a highlight reel through his hometown, making sure he got to do whatever he wanted to do today. We went to visit basically everywhere he loved, from his old friends from back when I worked at the adoption center, to his favorite river to play around with the team in, even to Riverview Park, the place where we first met. Eventually we got to Riverview Park, and Gaia was starting to get really tired suddenly. It was starting to become clear that Gaia just wanted to spend time saying goodbye to everyone else, and who the fuck am I to deny him that? After the team noticed that Gaia wasn't joining in on playing with them once again, it was time for Gaia to tell everyone what was going on for the past few days, finally revealing his heart condition and heart attacks to everyone else so that they could finally know why he hasn't been feeling so well since the hike. The results were immediate and as horrible as I feared. Moon already knew Gaia was sick, but not to this extent, while Cinder was trying to keep herself composed for the group, but was clearly breaking down inside. Kate, meanwhile, was just confused and upset at everything, mainly why everyone else was so sad since I didn't think he knew what was going on. Gaia had to explain that he was dying, and that everyone else would soon have to continue on without him. In particular, Moon was having a hard time accepting this since they've known each other for so long. Even before I officially adopted her and really relied on Gaia a lot for those early days to help her recover from her injuries. Gaia and Gate are extremely close, and seeing Gaia like that was devastating to him. Gate was mainly just upset to see everyone so sad. The sight of a Hydreigon grieving is rare, but one of the hardest things to watch that I've ever seen. We all tried to calm him down, but there wasn't anything that anyone else could have said to make things better. Out of everyone though, I think Cinder took it the hardest. After that massive argument, she knows the real reason why he is taking it easy and how much pain he is in. Cinder completely broke down, apologizing as much as possible for what she had done to him. It's nighttime right now, and we all just huddled together, trying to make this as easy as possible for Gaia, who is completely exhausted now and is running out of time. But nothing about this is easy. I'm honestly not quite sure what to do anymore, other than be there for everyone. As Gaia went to sleep for the night, it became clear to everyone that he just is ready to move on. According to Moon, the last thing he said before going to sleep for the night was, "Thank you for everything." Everyone else is asleep right now, and I just can't. Not while knowing that there's a very real chance Gaia is already gone. I'm just really scared right now that he's already gone. I'll never see him alive again, and that it's all my fault. I never should have let things get this bad, and should have told the team earlier. There's a million things I wish I did differently. Gaia can't be gone, right?
I honestly could not tell you if I saw this post when it was happening back in October 2023. But I can tell you exactly where I was when I saw the following post. There's something so poetic about this single tweet. It's just 3 words. That's it. It's not even new information for us. We knew it was coming, but it doesn't make it any easier. And with how every other post is just walls of text, seeing the opposite is just devastating. To be fair, there is a second page with that signature wall of text, so...
Gaia died last night, going peacefully in his sleep, surrounded by his loved ones. It went out on his own terms, but yet everything still feels horribly wrong. This whole fucking thing feels like it's my fault. For not getting Gaia treatment earlier, for taking him on that arc-damned hike a few weeks back, for not listening to Gate and letting us get tricked into walking into that blizzard, for letting things get so bad without telling anyone else, and for not being able to do anything to save him. I still feel like I failed as a trainer and as a friend for letting this happen. I woke up this morning to Gate and Cinder desperately trying to wake Gaia up, but it was never going to work. Moon was still asleep, but she knew something was wrong. Gaia was rushed to the Poke Center, but all that happened was that the obvious was confirmed. Gaia's heart had fully stopped, and he was dead, and he's gone now, and there isn't a way to bring him back anymore. Gate didn't fully understand what happened at first once Gaia was declared dead, and there truly isn't a worse feeling than having to explain the death of a family member to a Hydreigon and watching him slowly realize that his best friend isn't ever going to be coming back. Once he realized that Gaia was gone forever, Gate broke down to the point where I had to recall him and move the conversation outside so that he wouldn't burn down the Poke Center out of grief. Not that I would blame him in that moment. As for Moon and Cinder, they were also crushed to learn about Gaia's death. Cinder is furious at me for not telling her that Gaia was dying sooner, while just wishing that she could have truly apologized to Gaia for her outburst last week. Moon was just completely silent, and even Gate was starting to get angry at me for hurting everyone else by not telling them about his condition and lying to everyone else. The worst part is that I completely understand how they all feel. This was hard for me knowing that Gaia was dying, and I can't imagine how bad it was for them, who all had much less of a warning. And I understand them being upset that I knew, but never said anything. I just feel horrible that I robbed everyone of their chance to really say goodbye to Gaia because I was too arc damn selfish to bring myself to tell them about his health. I've managed to arrange a funeral for tomorrow, but this whole process has been awful for everyone. I'm just not sure what to do anymore, or if there's anything that I can do to try and make things up for everyone else.
And once again, I am at a loss for words. For now, here's a comment from Gliss. It's a battle we can't win, only fight. And he fought braver than anyone. It's time now to rest. Good night, Gaia. It'll be a while, but you'll see your friends again, and they'll be needing someone as solid as you. The next post covers the funeral service, with some more details of how Gate, Cinder, and Moon are feeling. Cove got the tree on Gaia's shell removed and put next to his grave. There's also a speech that Cove gave at the service, and it's long, heartfelt, and conclusive. And most interestingly, Cdv3 even recorded himself giving the speech that I showed you at the very beginning of this video. So, that's the Gaia arc, and I believe it to be some of the best work that Cdv3 has ever done. Cdv3 is a master of foreshadowing, and going back through this has really shown me how often he does it. Gaia's death has been hinted at for like a month, but every time the thought was just pushed away, like many people do when the thoughts of mortality comes up. Cdv3 has also been able to claw into the community's collective hearts through his everyday posts, and that is very clear with the response to the Gaia arc, which I didn't show you any of the comments for the sake of pacing, so let's hit a highlight reel. Maybe it'll help us feel better. On the second post, where Gaia faints during battle,
I regret getting attached to him now. Why do you pull on my heartstrings like this? Fuck. Poor thing.
And then there's this chain, which is one of the people Cdv3 wanted to shout out. In fact, Cdv3 specifically said that Sleepless Lucas
has written several incredible stories and has left a lot of amazing comments, including one that actually made me tear up over an area dose.
I'm not gonna read all of it, as I'm starting to get a little self-conscious about how I'm bluntly stealing from these creators. Part 3, where Gaia has an attack during lunch.
How dare you tug on our heartstrings like this? How dare you? I was like, oh, fuck. When I read that title, 07, Gaia, I cried like a bitch reading this. I barely know this Torterra due to becoming active here only more recently, but OMG. This is heart-wrenching. I'm going to cry, OMG. My heart sank when I read that title, oh goodness.
Oh, and Yo-Yo Yoshi was the other person Cdv3 wanted to shout out, saying that they're
someone who I forgot to mention that I have worked with several times and have written some of the best storylines on the whole subreddit.
And Part 4, Gaia's last day.
Stop, I'm fully crying. I just can't. Seriously, if you're going to write something sad, at least have the decency to be a bad writer. Seriously, this is written so well. Damn, are you just gonna bring out the big guns like this? I had to come back to this after an hour after reading this because I couldn't write anything. Your narrative is so powerful, it took away my literacy. I still don't know what to say, or if I even can. Having to duck into a bathroom at work because I started crying. God damn. Everything has been beautifully written, and while I'm new to the sub, I have been lurking for a bit longer than that, and Gaia plus the rest of your team were characters that stuck out to me a lot, so this is devastating. In a good way. How do I say this?
Gaia.
Fuck, man, I've been lurking on this story because I don't know what even to say, but the story brought me near tears multiple times and I'll never be able to fully explain why to my partner. Ow, my heart. I don't know how you managed it, but you have literally brought everyone together for this fictional turtle. With all the dark post controversies lately, this should be a prime example on how to execute one.
Oh, wow. Using Cdv3 as an example, huh? Someone should get around to analyzing his work to help other people write as well as him. Anyway, there's way more in the comments. Hell, I cut most of the comments out to just the funny little bits. But the point is that people care about Cdv3's characters, and the execution shown in Gaia's impending death is a prime example of how to do a heavier, trauma-filled story. You need to let people get attached. Starting off with some light slice-of-life type posts lets anyone learn about these funny little fictional characters. Slowly you add little bits of fun. Trauma from a character's backstory becomes relevant, or there's tension between characters. It's important that these are small things, and you need to let the characters win. To see those little blorbos come up against a challenge, to see them struggle, and then to see them win is to let people get attached. People get into the comfortable rhythm of asking, how will they get out of this one? And then watching them do it. The hardest part is deciding when the wall is. The challenge that cannot be beat, the consequences surrounding it. Where will you look down at your characters, your creations, and finally give them the harshness of the world? There are no heroes here, just what could have been. I've had the pleasure of speaking with Cdv3 both on a call and through text, and his necessity to return to torturing his characters was something I asked about and teased earlier.
So, one of the main things that I've done with my writing is, obviously, these characters have been through a lot. But the thing is that they've always been able to overcome everything. They're always able to get through things as well as they can and make the best of bad situations. And that's kind of the main thing that I've wanted to show throughout the many posts.
While Cdv3 might be one of the masters of tragedy and trauma, I find this outlook interesting, and it explains a lot. Bad things happen all the time, and while it would be nice to not have those things happen, what's important is that you push through it. With this in mind, it suddenly makes a ton more sense why he believes that post 18, the one with the horrid shock video, is his worst one. I may argue that it's not unreasonable, not illogical, or not too edgy, but that's not what matters. What matters is that there's something to grow from, something to overcome, something to deal with, and that post has nothing. It's being edgy for the sake of edgy, without providing anything. Alternatively, all the way back at post 4, where Cove finally talks about his team, I pointed out something weird. Cinder and Moon were both adopted, which allows Cdv3 to start these characters with trauma. Gate received his trauma at the very start with Leech Seed. By having these extra chords to tug on, these characters feel like more than just a cutout. But who did I not mention here? I strongly believe that Gaia, for about the first 30 or so posts, was the weakest character on Cove's team. The only character traits we have for Gaia is that Gaia doesn't get angry at anyone from the Will-O-Wisp arc, and that's it. For Gaia to be a strong character, like the rest, something had to be done. Like killing Gaia off. Well, actually, it's more like having Gaia deal with some sort of trauma, and the trauma surrounding the fact that he's going to die and soon fits perfectly. Admittedly, I don't think we got enough of the details about regular Gaia, so we could have compared and contrasted the attitudes or actions between regular Gaia and dying Gaia. The trauma surrounding death is a relatable one, and these small issues can be ignored because of it. Gaia's death started by weighing down Cove and the reader, knowing that every small issue could be the last thing Gaia ever deals with. And once Gaia does actually die, that trauma isn't lost. No, it spreads to the rest of the party. But like Cdv3's philosophy suggests, Cove and his party have to fight through this. And just like they usually do, or just like we do, Cove, Cinder, Moon, and Gate will move on, and they will be all the better for it. While I've spent probably a lot of time covering Cdv3's stories, there's one aspect of PokeMedia that hasn't actually come up yet: crossovers. Ever since Gaia's death, Cdv3 has done a ton of crossovers with other creators, and all of them are really well done. These crossovers allow people like me, who was only really reading Cdv3's posts, to see other creators and to see how cool their characters are. I'm not going to cover any of those in detail here, as I'd have to give them the space to breathe, and this video or script reading, this whole thing is long enough already. However, I will give you the summary of everything that's happened since Gaia's death, so you could hop into one of my other favorite arcs that includes a crossover. With that in mind, let's cover about 40-ish more posts. After the funeral, the main cast takes a week off, letting Cdv3 post some Poke News and some Adoption Center posts. When they return, Cove has a new friend to try and relieve some tension. Meet Blossom. Blossom is a deerling with a prosthetic leg. It wouldn't be a Cdv3 post if it didn't involve a character with trauma. And when Blossom meets the team, it goes well! Minus Cinder, who believes Blossom's here to replace Gaia. Oh well. There's a little bit of trauma as Blossom learns Leech Seed, which we all know Gate is deathly afraid of, so Cdv3 has a crossover with Gamespection, or Kane, where Gate learns how to deal with being Leech Seeded and trapped. It's a fantastic little arc that also allows for a bit of fun with the teams interacting. Then, there's some good amount of Halloween-related posts, which are fun, but it wouldn't be a Cdv3 story arc without trauma or a character development or whatever at this point, man. And boom, you are ready to read through A Shadow of Cinder. And one of the things that Cdv3 does that makes him one of the best is that he puts in the effort to sometimes index his posts. In fact, I've been just going through his relevant PokeMedia posts in order when working on this video, and it has made it considerably easier than it would have been otherwise. While, at time of writing, he's stopped updating the main list about 4 months ago, he's created separate posts for storylines, and A Shadow of Cinder is one of them. Not only does this index include all of the relevant posts before the arc started, not only does it have a small summary for each post, not only did I comment on it, but it also includes the post that Sam, Arbitrary Chaos, wrote for this as well. So, there you go. If you want to keep reading about Cove and its group stuff, start with A Shadow of Cinder. It'll be like the first link in the description. You probably won't even have to hit show more on the description. It'll be whatever funny line, an empty line, and then the link. However, if all this talk has gotten you interested in just browsing PokeMedia in general, I need to give you a few more details to catch you up to the present day, and by present day I mean when this script was written, the start of April 2024. About 4 months ago, Gliss, you remember Gliss, right? I mentioned them in the intro, the gay rabbit. And Moon got into an escalating online argument, leading to Gliss making a Gliss track, which is sung to the tune of We Didn't Start the Fire. Let's look at that real fast.
Snipped flower, scarred a bitch in my business dream, which levitating, miserating, bully tap your foe. Failed psychic, poor CDV, false problems, lethargy, all of these pass with C's, but you're failing more. Cinder, Shadow, Gaia's hard, that's on you, your fault. The trauma in their minds, you put it there with your lines. Competence, ignorance, all your failings hurt them. Are you finished, fucking menace? Glad the turtle got out. You could have saved Gaia when his heart was failing, you ignored his flailing. You could have saved Gaia, organs getting crushed with every headlong rush. You could have saved Gaia, you're not taking pills, call that a proxy kill. You could have saved Gaia, no one said goodbye because of all your lies, 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 your lies. You could have saved Gaia.
Ah, damn, that's some good shit right there.
You could could have saved Gaia.
Some of the lines could use a little work, and I did make some slight edits, but Kickback Artist, or Gliss if we're in character, did phenomenal writing that. Oh, wait, I'm off track again. Part of this arc was the 3-year anniversary of Cove adopting Moon. And with that, we got to see a little look into Moon's backstory. Moon used to belong to a contest coordinator who tried to keep all their Pokemon perfect for winning contests, so much so that they'd have their Umbreon attack the others to keep them in line. Got it? Good. About 2 months ago, there was a crossover with Kane, Gamespection, which, by the way, is one of my other favorite creators in the sub. I didn't mention them at the start because I thought I'd cover them in a Cdv3 crossover, so that's my fault, and this is my formal apology to Kane or Krula or Gamespection or Concern. I'm sorry, I'm getting off track again. This crossover, titled Surprise Vacation, lasted over a month, where Kane traveled to Cove's house to stay there while Kane's house had work done to it. This resulted in a lot of fun and light-hearted times. But if you're seeing a pattern in Cdv3's stories, nothing can go well for that long. And what went wrong was a new character being introduced. Completely unrelated to Cove or his party, Cdv3 would start posting daily Callisto posts. And Callisto is someone who keeps a team of Pokemon for contests, and only contests. And also, if you ask Cdv3,
Did you just want to make a character that everyone hates, or?
Correct. Yeah, he is not meant to be likable in the slightest.
oh, so what did Callisto do to make people not like him? Well, he started with some introductions of Fern the Meowscarra and Mocha the Cincino. I haven't checked with my Pokemon man if that's how you pronounce it. Then he immediately followed that with a post hating the concept of battling. And then 2 posts about Mocha's first contest, which didn't go well, resulting in Callisto getting rid of them. So I think hating him is fair. Some other Callisto posts include Meet Maribel the Meowstick, who's great at de-escalating? Why would she need to do that? Hating on Dino? Danino? I did not check with my Pokemon guy. Dano? It's the base form of the Hydreigon. So, I mean, I guess, that might just be to separate Callisto from Cdv3. And introducing the last member of Callisto's team, Kuro the Umbreon. Commence the comments.
You didn't. Oh, fuck. Kuro the Umbreon. What? Uh-oh.
And yeah, that's the context of that comment chain I had at the start. Who says I'm bad at this video making thing? Me, I did. And that's the perfect time to wrap this up.
So, hey, Pan Gaming here.
Fuck. I promised myself when I was making this video that I wouldn't update it because so much happens on the subreddit, and yet here I am, like a dumbass. PokeMedia added a new flare. Whenever you make a post, you flare it on what type of post it is. A lot of these are editable. The storylines you would just edit. But the usual flares are like casual, adventure, plotline. Whenever you did a mystery dungeon one, you would have to edit a different flare to say, hey, this is a Pokemon mystery dungeon universe, and therefore isn't the regular, Pokemon world stuff. They recently added a Pokemon mystery dungeon flare, which means that, of course, Cdv3 has had to dip his toes into it. So he's made 2 posts. There's this one, Kuro the Umbreon in Capim Town. I'm not gonna pretend like I know anything about this whole bit. And he says here that he probably won't post too much Pokemon Mystery Dungeon stuff, but he, as far as I can tell, he is very into Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, and as soon as I heard the news, I knew he would have to give this a go. So, as an explanation, if you are unaware, and if you go through the subreddit and he's posting Pokemon Mystery Dungeon stuff. This isn't scripted. This is live. This is live pan gaming here. Yeah, so Pokemon Mystery Dungeon is a spin-off of the games. I know I talked about it for earlier on Pokemon Mystery Dungeon's Gates of Infinity or whatever, for his reference of Gate. In fact, most of the music I've been using is Gates to Infinity or Explorers of Sky, I believe, right now. I'm not going to go check. If you are unaware, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon is a universe where there are no trainers. It's just Pokemon, surviving. Most of the Pokemon Mystery Dungeons games start with you being, a human or something. Not that you see that. You take a BuzzFeed quiz to figure out what type of Pokemon you are, and then you turn into that Pokemon with no knowledge of what happened. So you show up out of the blue. Usually you go ahead and make a good friend, a companion along the way. And then some crazy shit happens, and from the few games, maybe just game, that I've played from the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon spin-off series, they're really good. So yeah, that's what the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon tag is it's a spin-off kind of thing. I would say they're separate entirely, but Cdv3, I suppose not wanting to make another character, decided to use Kuro, the Umbreon. Yeah. I'm pretty sure, well, technically, they're different. It's a Pokemon Mystery Dungeon version of Kuro, who, since they're all Pokemon, they're all intelligent enough to use the social media, because now it's not a social media, it's not our world, but there's Pokemon in it. It's a Pokemon world, so all the Pokemon can use social media. Oh boy, I should have just scripted this. Yeah, so it's technically the same character. It's from Cdv3. They are completely separate. Knowledge about one of them does not pertain to the other one. But Kuro does still kind of fit that asshole vibe. Yeah. Still fits that kind of mean, like Callisto, like Sun, or whatever they say. I guess that's this update. I didn't want to update the script. This is the low tier, easiest thing to do to try and fix this issue, because I'm not rewriting shit. I'm just going to put this in the middle of here, so that's good. Anyway, keep the video going. A huge thank you to Cdv3 for allowing me to interview him, as well as message him about his content as I created this video, as well as letting me steal his stuff for this, which, now that I think about it, I never asked him if this was okay with him, so thanks for making content for me to steal. If you'd ever like to see this interview in full, there's a link in the description or at the end of the video. But there's one last bit to this story. All of this talk of PokeMedia, and I couldn't resist anymore. It's time for my turn on PokeMedia. So after all of that, and how many months of lurking on PokeMedia, I figured I'd use this chance to try starting out, and also using it as a chance to show how to get you started. Cdv3's advice was to start small. You don't need to have a ton of backstory or a plot arc, just start small. And while the plan is to start small, I don't really know much about the world or the lore of Pokemon, so I wanted to have someone who does. Enter LanCon. LanCon's been playing these games for quite a while, and he's the guy to ask stupid questions like, is there canonically ice cream for Pokemon? And to be clear, though, Rule 8 states that every post is in its own universe, so it doesn't actually matter if anything is canon to the actual games or media, but I'm going to try to stick to canon as much as possible. What do I want to start off with? Well, you need the profile and the name for your character, and since I love to go by Pan, let's have my character be called Paniel. Since we're going with the pan joke, the at can be a drying pan, since that's a Pokemon reference I get. Right, name's locked in, don't forget your flair, but what about my team? Well, my favorite Pokemon is Trapinch, so I have one. I have a Trapinch. Do I have any others? Maybe. there's room to add any as they come up. At this point, Lan and I came up with a dynamic. I figured since I don't really know anything about Pokemon, Paniel is someone who works from home and is technically a trainer, even though I don't really battle or know anything about battling. So with that in mind, what's my first post going to be? Well, at minimum, it should be casual, and let me introduce Trapinch. And while I was thinking about it in the dead of night, my arm got itchy, and itchy is also known as inspiration. At least it was for me at that minute. So the idea was arm itchy, scratching it doesn't work, maybe try biting it? Trapinch sees it, may attempt to bite me. Yeah, good enough casual post, but here's the part where I decided to take extra time. I wanted to make a photo to complete the joke of the post, but I need 2 parts to a photo, the Trapinch and the set. Using my unique skills involving hit games like Gmod and Tower Unite, I've spent time trying to figure out what's going to work. Gmod could work, has various Pokemon models, but posing ragdolls isn't something I'm very good at, so that could end up taking me hours per post. Tower Unite, on the other hand, is something I do have experience with, and I can build some decent looking sets in it. However, there's no Trapinch on the workshop, meaning I would need to draw or edit him into the picture, and that's not really an issue. I edit my own thumbnails.
So, this is Tower Unite. Welcome to Tower Unite. I'm going to show you just a little bit of some of the effort that goes into these sets. Each of these is a preset kind of thing for you to work off of. I just use house. It's the default easiest one to use because it's a house. Now this is going to have the results of several different posts laid out throughout it. Ignore why there's 2 doors, that's not important. The first one that I made was this one, at the desk. So the idea was that I was going to be sitting in this chair, right, itching my arm, and while I'm sitting at this desk, you know, looking over, and then Trapinch would be on this stepladder right here. I'd have this monitor could be on, you can cue any sort of video on there, so I put some Pokemon, like lo-fi Pokemon music to relax to. Something simple, something easy. Each of these pieces can actually be moved by itself. I believe, in fact, you might not be able to see it in the actual post, but all of this was added for a later series of events. But yeah, all of these were each placed by me separately. This is a custom mouse pad, so I had to figure out what I was going to put for that, and I figured doing that art of Trapinch that I really do enjoy would be a very good one. Setting this up took quite a bit. I don't exactly remember how much time. I kind of lose track, you know, when you're having fun. Just hope no one noticed that. I turned off clipping on these to get a better angle, but you can also turn on no clip so I can get the best angle. And then to get rid of the HUD, you have to, there's a camera item, so I'm holding the camera now. And then when you left click, it takes a screenshot and you can move on with the process. Roughly, here's the shot, and here's an attempt at drawing Trapinch in there. Here it is using an official art. Adding a filter to the official art. And I think that's good. Crop it down, scale it down further, and that's perfect. The final steps to make this post is to go to tweetgen.com, put your names in the places, add a profile picture, which is a handmade image of a Trapinch eye, and realize you haven't named Trapinch yet. So, Trapinch, inch, centimeter, sen. Yeah, sen could work. No one will see through that. Alright, type it all out and get the post. Hop over to PokeMedia, attach the Twitter image, the photo itself, give credit if needed, and flare it. If you're going to want to say something meta, make sure to use /UJ and sit back. And surprisingly, get a almost instant comment from Charity. Cool. And after a few hours, I've gotten quite a few nice comments. It's kind of crazy to me that some of the major players are here, but that's just some of the hospitality you can find on PokeMedia.
So with such a successful starting post, it's important to keep the ball rolling. If you want to start building an audience, you're going to need to be a little consistent. Cdv3 does daily posts, but I'll aim for every other day. I've also seen advice going around that commenting on other people's posts is another great way for people to start recognizing you. But to be honest, I am scared of doing that, so I'll try to give some replies to some comments whenever I can come up with something. The next post would be giving Sen a plushie to chew on, which also introduced LanCon as a character, taking Sen out on a walk, thinking about how Sen would wear clothes, and that classic pet trying to wake you up to feed them. Something I've been very surprised by is how supporting the community is. Somehow, Charity comments on all of them within 5 minutes of posting every time. Is she okay, Charity? Are you some sort of time wizard? Arbitrary Chaos 13, or Sam, has also commented, and Loretep and Dogs of War. It was and is still crazy to me to see such big names commenting on my posts, and I still don't know what to say to these people. Oh, and there's that Bob Professor guy. I don't know if he makes posts, but he's commented on quite a few of mine recently, and I'm starting to recognize him everywhere. So yeah, I think I'm doing pretty well on PokeMedia. I'm having a good time, and that's what's important. If you're brave enough to travel to PokeMedia, and maybe make some posts or comments yourself, feel free to drop on by some of the greats, or my posts if I'm still making them. They do take some effort when you're going with actual pictures, and I'm kind of running out of Trap-Inch images. Where are the Trap-Inch images? Where are they? But anything I or Cdv3 does cannot possibly compare to the #1 character on the subreddit. While the account Accomplished Exam 314 doesn't mean much to you or anyone, really, the character this account hosts are the best PokeMedia has to offer, and I suppose I will grant you the pleasure of showing you a few of them here. Mill. Loom, Crystal, Zapap. Mankey is a one-of-a-kind photographer who, with the help of a Rotom phone, has been delivering top-notch quality content, but Mankey also has such a way with words. Plus, Ufa. At some point, he found the heart emoji, as seen here, here, and here. Don't think that anywhere is too far away from Mankey. He goes wherever he pleases, like that time he found Blas at the academy, or when he was at the top of that tower, or the top of that mountain. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know anything about the mainline Pokemon games, and I don't know where these places are, but I don't know. I guess that's it. Video over. Let's make this outro as fast as the intro. Here's a bonus video you can only find here to the left, and a full interview with Cdv3 to the right. Please leave a comment. I read all of them. And that is Pan Gaming signing off.